A London borough has just announced a national first and something of a transformative policy. Tower Hamlets is run by Mayor Lutfur Rahman, and he wrote this on Twitter. Announcements. An historic day in Tower Hamlets. Cabinet has just officially approved the rollout of university free school meals for secondary students, making us the first local authority in the country to do so. Access to a decent, healthy meal is integral to a young person's success and a key part of my vision for improving life chances in Tower Hamlets. Especially in a cost of living crisis, universal free school meals can change lives. Our universal lunches will be served from September, with all Tower Hamlets schools on the scheme by January 2024. That's really quick execution. Now, it's common to hear reservations around universalism as an approach to things like free school meals. Why pay for middle-class kids to have decent meals for free? Spend that money on just the poor ones. Now, I disagree, and the evidence suggests that universalism works for a bunch of reasons. We haven't got the time to talk about all of that today, but in Tower Hamlets, that argument is particularly irrelevant. Why? Because the borough has the highest rate of child poverty in the whole of the UK. According to City Monitor, 56% of children in Tower Hamlets lived in poverty in 2020. That's 25% higher than London as a whole, and almost triple the child poverty rate for the UK that year, which stood at 20%. So if anywhere needs free universal school meals for secondary school students, then it's Tower Hamlets. Now, you might remember a recent announcement by Sadiq Khan, the Mayor for London, about free school meals across the city. That was a commitment he made in February, but it's important to say it only applies to primary school children. In other words, from those aged 4 to 11. But that's something Tower Hamlets has done since 2014, when Rahman introduced the policy during his first tenure as mayor. The council claims this new policy will save local families a whopping £550 per year per child, and it's expected to cost £5.7 million, the borough's budget, by 2024. Rahman said that the plan was to help mitigate the impacts of household food insecurity, reduce health inequalities, and save families time and money. All seems very reasonable. Heaven forbid a politician does that. And I have to say, with this policy of free school meals, it makes so much sense. You're running a school canteen. Surely it's good to know how many kids are going to want how much food. You don't have wastage. You can allocate resources efficiently. Monday to Friday, we have X number of people wanting X number of meals. Again, it's sensible, rational, makes sense. Why is that so rare in this country? While there was a BBC write-up of this story, the first thing that comes up on Google News for Lutfur Rahman and the BBC, at least the time of broadcast, is this from February. This article just reads like a hit piece. Tower Hamlets, Lutfur Rahman's council spending plans cause concern. They cause concern, presumably because a politician had the temerity to actually do something. The controversial mayor of Tower Hamlets, Lutfur Rahman, has unveiled spending plans that would use millions of pounds of council savings to achieve his manifesto promises. Mr. Rahman returned to lead the council last year, 7 years after he was removed by an election court for corrupt and illegal practices. So the story is that there's a worry that an elected politician might do the things he campaigned on. Okay. It then makes clear this article is based on a random guy's tweet. Councillors were made aware last week that the East London Authority's Chief Executive Will Tuckley was to leave by mutual consent. The Chief Executive of the Chartered Institute for Public Finance, CIPFA, Rob Whiteman, responded to news of Mr. Tuckley's departure by tweeting, "Will Tuckley deserves the sector's thanks. Let's not have one of those moments when people recognise too late that there are problems. CIPFA has concerns Tower Hamlets is going wrong again and will need intervention." I should add that the Mayor's team told the BBC that the Chief Executive's departure was amicable and CIPFA's comments are, quote, completely unfounded. But the story here is this. Elected person does what they said they would. Unelected person on megabucks leaves. Other unelected guy says maybe the elected guy should be replaced by more unelected people because he's doing the things he promised when he tried to be elected. Those things include, it turns out, free school meals for secondary school students.
I think a lot of the establishment are very opposed to democracy when it works against their interests. You know, you looked at that statement from Rob Whiteman, who's from CIPFA, which is, you know, the accounting firm that looks after local authorities, and how he's saying, oh, we're worried that Tower Hamlets is going wrong again. How is it going wrong again? It's perfectly within its rights to allocate part of its council budget to this massive cost-saving scheme. And, you know, you've now got these families that will have free school meals, thanks to the Sadiq Khan policy and this new policy, all the way up until year 11. That is huge. That is going to save households hundreds, if not thousands of pounds a year, because free school meals are currently only available to households where the income is under £7,400. Across the UK, there's only 800,000 children who live in poverty and miss out on free school meals because of that really, really low cap, despite the fact their families desperately need a relief scheme like that. If you look at the way the cost of living is impacting inner city London, which matters because what happens to our cities eventually spreads to all our other ones, you've got a huge shortage at the moment of children in inner city London. Why? Because the cost of living is biting middle earners and families so hard that they cannot afford to live there, which is leading to school closures, which is leading to the people that work in schools leaving. You've got a mass exodus of public sector employees. Hackney, there's a really good piece by Aditya Chakraborty in The Guardian where he looks at these school closures and what it says about the way that this cost of living crisis and the preceding years of austerity are reshaping what our cities look like and why that's important. And he says that Hackney has 589 fewer kids in reception classes today than it did in 2014, which is a shortfall equivalent to 20 vacant classrooms. And there's a really good quote about children being this thing called an indicator species, which is as long as a city or a town has a good and large mix of kids, you know it will be fine. But the signs from London's indicator species are poor. And the changes that happen to London are also changes that happen to places like Manchester, Liverpool. We see it more and more. It costs so much to live in cities, and for families and the people who support all the social services, such as, key workers, nurses, doctors, etc., they simply cannot afford to live there anymore. So our inner cities are being robbed, which means that our outer cities soon get robbed. And so you have this amazing scheme, which immediately relieves a huge amount of pressure on these families. And the nerve of this chartered accounting firm executive to come over and say, we're worried about the way the council direction is going. It didn't say anything about Croydon, the Labour-run council, when it was absolutely bankrupting until well after the fact. There were no concerns raised there. When it was Labour-run council was absolutely bankrupting this borough through investment in property, etc., much more unwise decisions. Nothing was said by SIPFA until after the fact, when a lot of, hindsight blogs were written. But now we have this policy, which is actively, clearly going to improve lives in the very short term and long term. And they have the nerve to criticize it as financially irresponsible. It really shows you where the interests lie.
That's such a good point about Croydon. I mean, Lutfur Rahman, I know he raises passions. I mean, I interviewed the guy last year. I think he's a very affable, intelligent, calm man. I think he's been grotesquely misrepresented in the media. If you want to watch that, of course, just search our YouTube channel. He had the temerity of being a brown man, I think, this is my view, who managed to win on the basis of huge, overwhelming support from a minority community in London and to actually do something for working people. He had the temerity to do that. And by doing that, he put a target on his back. You know what? He came back and he's doing some pretty good stuff in office. You don't have to support everything he does, like LTNs, but this is fantastic. UK first, and I think a really commendable piece of legislation.